If you work for the Catholic Church and want to reclaim time for discipleship, we are here to help. I'm Jon Konz, and this is the Catholic Ministry Professionals Podcast, your favorite leadership development podcast for Catholic churches. Today, we're talking about how one apostolate is bringing parishes together, reaching beyond the pews, and even bringing people back to the church. Isaac Summers joins us today from Decided Excellence Catholic Media. Isaac, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. That's a beautiful intro. It made me feel more important than I actually am. Not gonna lie.
No. You got an immortal soul. There's no mere mortal here today, right?
There you go.
Hello,
It's marked
C.S. Lewis.
indelibly from time to
That,
time. Yeah.
amen. So I know a little bit about you, but you might be new to some of our listeners. So why don't you take a moment, Isaac, just tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, no, hopefully I am new to most of our listeners just to have a little bit of privacy in my life. But I am, so I'm Isaac Summers. I am the Director of Marketing and Business Development at Decided Excellence Catholic Media, which is a media company that specializes in print publications, but we also do some digital work as far as evangelization and spreading the good news of the gospel through sharing local stories, right? And so, actually, just to give you a little bit more about myself, I originate in the teaching sphere.
Mm.
I was a Catholic school teacher for 5.5 years. Yeah, 5.5 years at a local Catholic high school here. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then the opportunity with Decided Excellence came aboard maybe about 4 years ago, 3.5 to 4 years ago. And um, I trusted the people that worked here, liked the mission, and there was a time where it was very good for my family who was looking to expand for me to take a little bit more role that was less in the classroom and more present to them. So that's kind of how I got into Decided Excellence Catholic
What
Media.
did you teach?
Oh, religion. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Sometimes I think to myself, I'm in a Catholic school. Everyone thinks I teach religion. So I was at a Catholic high school. And I was actually the director of student life and religion teacher. So I ran like the spirit life of the school, the extracurricular fun things, the student council, all those different things I was kind of in charge of. In addition to I taught all grade levels in my time there, but where they kind of landed me on is morality. Junior year morality was what I would teach in the classroom. So
Yeah, and I always like hearing before somebody launches into an apostolate or, like joins an apostolate, what you're doing, you have experience working with people, like in the classroom, and particularly being in marketing. As a teacher, you learn pretty, like sink or swim, you learn pretty quickly when you're in front of a room of 25 teenagers or, how to sell a message, so to speak, how to get past the blank look on somebody's face and hopefully get past that point and into their heads and into their hearts a little bit. And I'm sure that's a real skill set that you even probably bring to the table today.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I went into my position. So when I jumped on with Decided Excellence, I went in my positions actually as a project manager to kind of like learn the business and to kind of know, like, it was really like the president was like, hey, so the president and I, just to kind of go back, we had a previous relationship. He was the one who hired me at the high school. So he was the president of our high school. And then he moved on to become president of Decided Excellence Catholic Media. So then he said, hey, I got a job for you if you want it. It worked out in our life as a family. And we said, okay, we'll make the jump. Then he's like, as you come and learn the business, I just need somebody to kind of take on projects for me and get them done when I don't have the time to do that. And so that's how I started off. And then I guess I showed a little bit of the ability to work in the business development and the marketing sphere. And so he kind of said, like, this is a need for us. How about you jump into that? And like you said, I mean, I like to look at the world kind of through the high school lens, which is a little bit naive, but also like the world of man, right? In juxtaposition to the world of God, kind of has its own same formula that it uses. Like, we still have Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, the jock and, the popular girl, so whenever you're in the real world, it's just using stereotypes, but not placing people in those stereotypes and getting that message out to the people that you need a message in a non-malicious way, right? Hopefully, because we're an apostolate, we're here to help people, not try to take advantage of them and all that stuff. So
yeah, and something you said there kind of like perked my mind up too, of just this idea that when you were hired on, the president said to you, I've got these projects. I kind of need you to I need you to take them on so that I can focus on the broader mission and I can have
Mhm.
someone to get the things done. And now you're in this new role. But I really see that being the role of apostolates for our parishes. And a lot of our listeners are people who work in parishes. So
Yeah.
apostolates tend to be someone that you can bring on to help you to partner with the thing you're trying to do so that the parish pastor, even some of the higher leaders, formation director don't have to take on this other task. So with that in mind, like that's really what apostolates do is they help to fill these gaps. And so tell us a little bit about decided excellence. I understand it came from the secular world and then was brought into
Yeah.
the religious world. But yeah, tell me about decided excellence and the where they come from and the gap they're trying to fill.
Yeah, I just wanna pause and say I thank you for the analogy. You just called me the apostolate of Decided Excellence Catholic Media, right? You said, "I'm the guy." No,
You're the guy.
I appreciate it. Yeah, so Decided Excellence Catholic Media, so our founders find their roots in Lighthouse Catholic Media. So a lot of people remember Lighthouse Catholic Media as the thing that had CDs and pamphlets and things in the back of church and the kiosk. So, and I think they're handed out for free or some sort of donation or something like that. I can't remember what their business model exactly was. But our people were in the sales side of things, getting these things into churches, right? And so for them, it was a great gig in evangelization. But as many evangelization jobs happen, is that sometimes can't support a family, or much less a growing family that's open to life. And so they, as good Catholic men, entered into the business world, and they started their own secular magazine company, like community magazines. So if anybody receives kind of I'll call it an unsolicited magazine, right, that talks about community events, and like I live in a certain township here, and we receive one, and it says like, "Oh, this is what's going on at the park today," and this is But what drives those magazines are ad sales. And so they were salesmen, and so they started this community magazine, or at least they started this business that allowed any entrepreneur to start a community magazine in their area, based off the idea that you get the ad sales and you get the content, and then their company, which was called Best Version Media, which if you take down the initials of Best Version Media, BVM, maybe there's a little bit of hint there at their Catholicity there. But, so they take the if you got all of these if you got the sales, you got the content, Best Version Media would get the printing and the mailing and all that stuff, and they send it out. And this is actually, I think it still is, it's the largest this type of magazine business in the entire North America. So they have magazines all over the country, thousands of them at this time. So they did very successful in that business model, right? And so they went kind of from the flip side of where they were doing a bunch of evangelization and making no money, and now they went to doing not no evangelization because as a Catholic, like one of our founders has 13 kids, so like that's evangelization in and of itself, right? Being a culture of life in that. Then they wanted to say, okay, we have this business model that works. How can we apply this business model into evangelization? And about 10 years ago, they started Decided Excellence Catholic Media with the idea, okay, let's start to make Catholic magazines in the area to evangelize. And so that kind of was the beginnings of our company. And at first, it was just kind of this idea of, okay, any Catholic entrepreneur that wanted to test their waters in the sales field, um, and also Catholic content. As long as they went through our training and were supported by us and all those different things, they could start their own Catholic magazine in their local area. Um, and we would give them the assistance to do that. But more and more as time went on, I think probably about actually around the time that I began at Decided Excellence Catholic Media, and this was kind of one of my first projects, was we started priests just started to be like, "Hey, how do I get this for my parish? How can I get this magazine to highlight specifically just the parish?" Before they had touched on multiple parishes, like here's an event over at St. Paul's, here's an event over at, but some of the bigger parishes were kind of like, "Hey, we have a lot of things that we would like to showcase to our people, even if they're not coming to our church regularly. We have their their addresses, can we just send it out to them?" And so we started what we call the parish version. So we have a community, what we call a community model, and a parish model magazine that can go out, and they're started in different ways, but so that's what we do, and we have over 100 magazines across the country at this point, and are ever looking to grow, right? And that's part of a little bit of my job as the marketing and business development is
Yeah.
overseeing
So
that sales pipeline.
yeah, so on that parish side, tell me a little bit about how those pieces fit together because you're going to hear my unfiltered opinion, but where our parishes are trying to communicate with all their people, and in a desire to get the word out to the most people as often as possible, they've got their bulletin that they put together. They're sending out emails. They're on social media. They've got, and then every person who's owns a ministry has their own Facebook account for this ministry. And so there's all these different places that they're trying to communicate and still feel like people don't have any idea what's going on. So how do all these pieces fit together? And then if you're adding a magazine into this, like what's kind of the problem solution there? How do you ease the pain? Or the priests are reaching out to you for some reason. They
Yeah.
see a solution here. What's the solution you offer, and how it fits together with how it pulls it all together?
Yeah, I think the solution kind of goes towards the medium, right? The medium of magazines is one thing that you can be sure is that the magazine will arrive in a mailbox.
Hmm.
I mean,
What?
depending on the US Postal Service, most of the time it will end up in a mailbox at some point,
Have
right?
you found that making sure that the communication ends up in front of the person is important for them to
Yeah.
receive it? Have you found that?
I have found that, yeah, because I
Huh.
mean, true communication is sharing of ideas, right?
There you go.
But, yeah, so, yeah, and so in that way, a lot of I mean, that kinda just beats out social media right there, whereas you can't ever guarantee that because if the person's not online, number 1, they're not gonna see it, and number 2, depending on their algorithm and what they're liking and what they're stopping on, they might not see your posts or whatever, right? So, your social media is good. There's nothing wrong with any of these things that I'm about to say. Ours is a little bit better than, but yeah. So in that way, it beats social media.
And
Bulletins, good,
there's no algorithm that filters it out, right? I mean,
right?
it's in their mailbox.
Yeah, it's right there, right? And oftentimes, right, magazines stick around because there is something like nice about them, Whereas, and this is the president of our company, he has 7 kids, and he talks about having, like, bulletins just strewn across the back of his car just because his kids were playing with them or whatever at the end of mass, and it just like that they just get, picked up and thrown away and things of that nature. And it's not to say that people don't read bulletins because they do. I mean, there's no question there's plenty of people that read their bulletins. But from our perspective, right, a magazine is just something nice and it sticks around and you feel almost like not a moral obligation, but kind of a guilt. Like I feel like I should read this because somebody took the time to make this nice thing for us. And so we say that's how we kind of go a little bit better than the bulletins is that again, it's mailed directly to the home. And so even and obviously we don't suggest this, but even if a family missed a weekend mass because of Timmy's soccer tournament, that that the communication was still given to them because it was in their mailbox. And even though they didn't come to mass to pick up a bulletin or scroll through online to read their bulletin, usually people don't do that to my
And
knowledge.
they might even read an article about how mass is more important than soccer practice.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And we actually had, that's a great, yeah, we had a priest. He was in Tennessee. He is in Tennessee. He's still there. They have a magazine. But he talked about, it was a conversation starter for him because most of the time, whenever he's talking to his people, it's just from the pulpit. And a lot of priests, kind of follow the guidelines of being a little bit more gospel oriented, especially in kind of a new wave of Catholicism being interested in scripture. And so he doesn't put his personal inflection too much into it. But when he added the magazine, he's like, well, now I have this letter to them at the beginning and I started to have conversations because I was able to share more of myself in a different manner that he hadn't been able to do before. It's not to say that he couldn't have done that in a bulletin, but for whatever reason, the magazine helped out and worked open those conversations for him from different people that he said, quite frankly, he had never talked to before or had never felt comfortable going up to talk to him, which was a very interesting thought. That was something that I thought was like, wow, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah. Well, you actually have the opportunity. I mean, it's, like any cold calling campaign, right? You're in sales
Yeah.
or anything like that. you're gonna do a lot better if you've actually had the opportunity to warm the lead, so to speak.
Yeah,
And so when we
right.
look at our communities, if you can just send the magazine out, you're getting your parish name in front of them. You've got pictures of smiling people. Like, it's a lot more attractive than, and I would say graphically it's designed better than most, like, a lot of parishes will send out, a blanket postcard around Christmas and around Lent,
Sure.
inviting people to the Christmas Mass or to the Easter Mass or whatever,
Mhm.
just so that people who are disengaged. But imagine now once a month they're getting something, and there's always something evangelically poised and pertinent to now that they can interact with that warms the lead. So then when
Yeah.
they're invited either by a postcard in the mail or by an actual parishioner who runs into them and says, hey, you should come to mass, blah, 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 blah. They're like, oh, I've heard of you guys. Actually, I get your magazine. I love XYZ thing. Oh, I mean, it warms
Yeah,
the
right.
lead. One of the things that caught my attention from our first conversation was also then the idea of using the magazine as a bonding agent. And specifically, we had discussed that for what's a reality in my part of the country here in Iowa is that there are a lot of parishes that have now been merged to be parish groupings where
Yeah.
you might have, one parish with up to 7 or more worship sites or
Mhm.
7 churches that are a part of their grouping. So can
Yeah.
you walk me through a little bit about what that looks like and how you guys see yourselves as that bridge for parishes that are being merged or consolidated?
Yeah, and, yeah, what you're talking about is I mean, in the part of the country that I'm at, in Pennsylvania, or in specifically Pittsburgh, we went from, like, 200 parishes down to, like, 54. Now, that's all because they grouped a bunch of, buildings together and all that stuff, but, yeah, that's a reality for a lot of the churches in the North and the East, and so one of the things that, and this is just my own personal opinion, right? So I'm going to speak. I'm not. I like to. Whenever you're in the classroom, you gotta make sure you say like, this is just what my musings. This is not what the church teaches or anything like that. But what my own personal opinion is sometimes whenever we go through these bringing
M
together whatever
Consolidations or mergers or
consolidations,
yeah.
yeah, whatever you want to call them. We kind of just say like we're there and we just have to work with this and do it. And now you were St. John the Baptist, but now we are St. Blessed Carlo Acutis Parish, and you just kind of have to accept it. And we're going to have events together and all that stuff. And I think that's great. It's good, but sometimes what is it? The notion of the transcendent third from Aristotle, whatever. People become friends when they do things together, right? When they have something that unifies them and brings them together. And so this is kind of like a project, right? So it's a project between two parish staffs because usually the parish staffs are like the worst of the people that have to get along with each other because they're kind of like, we used to do it this way and you used to do it that way. And so
Or you might be better at my job than I am, so now I'm worried.
now I'm a little threatened. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So whenever we get a kind of like get past the tribalism, which is in one sense a beautiful thing, right? To be able to say we are a Catholic community of St. John the Baptist Parish, and we were something completely different than what St. Mary Magdalene Parish was that we're grouping with, right? That is something beautiful to have your own identity. But then when our Episcopal Father, whether we agree with him or not, says we need to come together, it's time to kind of lay down our weapons, our arms, and just kind of be like, okay, we need to come together. And oftentimes we just sit and stare at each other and say, we're unified, yay. Like, and then you just kind of keep going like nothing ever happened. And so the magazine allows for number one, parish staffs to have kind of a project that they can work on together and hopefully in that process with a good pastor that can be a unifying experience. And then number two, you have like the name of the new parish on there, and then you start to see Sally, who was formerly of St. Margaret Mary, or you're at St. Margaret Mary Church of what I say, St. Carlo Acutis Parish. Now you start to see under this cover, you see this is who's part of it, and under that you see the same thing with the other people. So it's a communication in which you don't have to kinda rebrand all that much, like you might have to do on social media, or you have to, you kinda have to find new followers and all that. How do you
Mhm.
do it now? We got a new Facebook page now, everybody go find it. Now it's it's more of a, we just you have a magazine and you see both sides, you see both stories of people, and you can really detail, you can continue to have an individual identity of your former parish. Like, it can still be present in there, but it's kind of under a new name and with a new partner, if you will, with the other parish. And so I think that there's a lot of beautiful and creative ways that parish staffs, parish communities can say, okay, we're together now. What's something we can work on to be better, and then showcase how we're going to be this new hands and feet of Christ in the local community.
Yeah, and what I've found when I work with parishes is that the main issue that when a community of parishes, right, a grouping of parishes continues to fight and think of themselves as not us, but we and them, the root of that is that they never like got clear on who we are and insisted upon it, right? That
Mm.
like I know that this hurts your feelings that this happened. It's a real grieving process. So even though we are Blessed Carlo Acutis Parish, you could still call yourselves, St. Joe's Church.
Yeah.
And what that does is it continues to reinforce that we are not the same. We are not them.
Mhm.
But what this allows you to do is put very front and center that we are this new reality together. Like this is who we are together. And to be able to even put pictures of people
Yeah.
from other communities that you don't know, but now you can introduce each other. You can do a whole workup on this. But the reason I know about you is and Decided Excellence is because my co-host Tai Hua, he got interviewed by an old friend of mine
Yeah.
for their Decided Excellence magazine, or I found out that they work together and that there's this connection there. So like it bridges the gap,
Yeah.
right? It becomes this unifying force where like the branding is there, the getting very clear on like why we exist. But the pastor can speak very directly into it without
Mhm.
necessarily having to have Ethel come up to him right after the homily and say, "I will never be Blessed Carlo Acutis Parish. My parents were married in this church. I was
Yeah.
baptized here, and it's
Yeah.
not. You don't have to. You can do the same thing and give people the time to mellow in the truth a
That's
little bit
right.
and marinate in it, and just allow it to take its effect kind of over time a little bit with more intentionality, with less risk of direct confrontation in the face of this new reality. And I do love that.
Yeah, and with the magazine, honestly, you can be a little bit more thoughtful in your message, right? Rather than just kind of an off the cuff answering questions in the middle of a town hall where maybe you said something you shouldn't have said. The emotions got the best of you. Right. It really is. The written word is something that we have hold dear as Catholics for generations. Praise God for that. And so I think that there's something beautiful about having maybe a slower form of communication, right? Just something that like you talked about, something you can sit with and be with, and then kind of like, it's a monthly magazine, so it's just kind of a monthly branding of the parish to people who may have had a hard time accepting it, to the point where it's like, all right, I'm gonna expect my magazine each month, like, and you start to see a new reality rather than, like you said, if somebody who didn't have that scene in front of them, they might just say, "This is St. John's. This is St. John's. This is St. John's." Like, this is where I belong. I don't necessarily belong to that side. But when you start to see them together, that visual reality, that incarnational reality, is something that can start to take a little bit more effect and hopefully alleviate some of the burdens. It's not a silver bullet. We're not going to say this is going to change your parish and say that everybody's going to forget their grandparents' sacraments, but it can help.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what bridges do.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
so walk me through a little bit of the practical application. You've talked about this. I do imagine some of the things that we've mentioned that you've talked about, those are probably resonating with some of our parish leaders. So for the parish leader who's listening right now, they're intrigued. What does it actually take to get this off the ground? Can I walk us through what the parish has to do to make something like this work?
Yeah, so the next step, if somebody was interested, it would be to reaching out to myself or Shannon, and I can, give that information here. Or even our website. We have a decidedexcellence.com/parish. You can put a website submission to get. And so what the next step is setting up a meeting with Shannon, who is our director of um, parish partnerships across the country. So she works with um, priests all the time. She actually just got back from a priest retreat, or not a priest retreat, priest conference. So she's very familiar, and she's also like a national Catholic speaker who's actually international. I guess she's spoken at World Youth Days and stuff like that. So she's very familiar with the church and evangelization, all that stuff. But she sits down with each pastor and whoever he wants on that meeting, the parish staff, whoever, and she kind of outlines, okay, this is the value for your parish. This is what we do, and ultimately, if somebody were to move forward with a publication with us, what they would do is they would be given a representative with us at Decided Excellence Catholic Media, and so somebody who would oversee gathering all of the content from the parish. Right, that's the number one and almost the only thing that we require of the parish. We want content, and then so they would be matched up with one representative from the parish, so kind of one to one. Doesn't mean that they can't have a team that works together, but there's just one point of contact, just for streamlining and efficiency between the parish and Decided Excellence Catholic Media. And then so as Shannon explains all of this, she talked about the benefits, kind of which we've already talked about here, in addition to the other things. And then Shannon would talk about pricing, right? And that's probably the number one decider of, because it's like if this was free, would you do it? And everyone would be like, yeah, we'd do it. Like it'd be awesome. So the pricing is determined, and it varies depending on parish, but it's basically determined on how many people you're sending the magazine to. That's the upfront cost, and then Decided Excellence has different packages and deals for parishes as well. And then as time goes on, as a parish has a magazine, just similar to how the bulletin works. Or actually, I don't know how their pricing works, but similar to how the bulletin has advertisements in the back of their bulletin, we have advertisements within the magazine, and so the parish could choose a representative to sell advertisements within the magazine. We also, at Decided Excellence Catholic Media, sell into magazines remotely. Now, it's more effective for somebody locally close to the ground to sell into parish magazines. But anyway, each advertisement that gets sold into the magazine brings the cost down for the parish. So it's like I was in youth ministry even before I was a teacher, and I thought to myself, well, I come out and tell them it's going to be $400 to go on the mission trip this year, and then every time that you participate in a fundraiser, we just knock off the cost, right? And it's the same type of idea. Each ad that we get sold in there will knock down the cost, and to the point where it could become completely free. We have a couple across the country that are completely free. It's not necessarily the norm, but it's certainly something that most of our magazines, actually all of our magazines, are reasonable for a parish because they're paying for them. So they're certainly reasonable costs. So she would discuss those things. Once that's agreed and signed upon, what we do is figure out a launch date and give a parish a deadline. And so then they just start to work to get all of their content into the Decided Excellence system. Again, they'd be trained on all of this.
I was gonna say, I can hear
Yep.
people saying like, "Oh, gathering all the content for a big magazine, like how do we fill, I don't know, 20 pages of content?"
Yeah.
So what does that look like? And then, if somebody doesn't have enough content, they're a small town and they can't
Yeah.
fill 20 pages, like what does that look like?
Yeah. So all of our magazines start at 16 pages, and
Okay.
the more advertisements that you go up by 4 pages, which is pretty standard in the printing industry. But so if you start at 16, we're trying to save six of those pages for advertisements, and 10 of those pages go to the parish for content. Now, if we don't have enough advertising in it, then the parish gets all the extra, so they get up to 13 pages or whatever it is, that happens. So in the event that you cannot fill that, and that's completely understandable because, filling up a magazine can be burdensome, right? Writing a bunch of articles month and month and month and month and month again, especially when it's like Lent and Advent where everybody's just like running around trying to figure out the schedule. That can be burdensome. So what we do at Decided Excellence Catholic Media is we have our partners that we work with. So we have national Catholic partners with Word on Fire, Relevant Radio, St. Paul's Biblical St. Paul's Center, Biblical Center of Theology. I don't know. Scott Hahn's
Is
place,
that
you know?
Scott Hahn? Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I was gonna
yeah.
say. So you've got like big hitters that'll put articles in there
Yeah,
that
and this,
and that's all
yeah, go ahead.
good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And these are people that that this is the Lighthouse Catholic Media connection. And now Lighthouse is currently owned by Augustine. So after our founders left a Lighthouse to start their own magazine business, it got sold to Augustine Institute. And so but there's still connections and they've utilized those connections. And yeah, so you have that library of articles to fill out your magazine. We also have our own writers at Decided Excellence Catholic Media. So we are constantly churning out new content for a parish so that they don't have to if they don't want to. And then in addition to that, we have, things like crossword puzzles, recipes, but we are saint of the month, things like that kind of break up just like so you're not just having like article, you're not reading a book, you're reading a magazine, something that's beautiful and fun to read. So we have all those things available to a parish. Parish content always comes first and foremost, right? So that the number one thing that always gets in the magazine is everything a parish submits to us, as long as they don't submit too much, which we do have some parishes that do submit too much from time to time. So we just push it to the next one. But
A question that you
yeah,
can feel free to skip if you're uncomfortable answering it, but do what happens in the event that somebody submits an article and it's trash? Like, I mean, from the parish, like the pastor's like, here's my thoughts, this is what I want them to know, and you read it and you're like, oh wow, there might be heresy in here, or or they're really this isn't going to hit well, Father. Like, what's that interaction look like?
yeah. So yeah, it depends on your definition of what trash is.
Well,
Obviously, so heretical we don't do. So
good.
we have in the process, right? So as if we were to continue along with the
That's.
process after the
I just
content
want
is
to say
submitted,
that that's a great T-shirt idea. By the way, we don't do heresy.
we don't, there you
That's
go.
a great one
Do
for
it
you
now.
guys. Great branding.
We don't do heresy. Yeah, and I'll even just like I'll put you guys' little logo on the back just
Perfect.
so because
That's
you
all
gave
I
us the
ask.
idea. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, no. So if you were to go later on in the process after they submit the content, we put it all together in a magazine format online in our system, and they get to go and review it, and we review it, and then we also have our quality control team that will look at all of the articles, do grammatical edits and all those things, but also content. That's very important to us to make sure that nothing in our and nothing in our magazines is going to be overtly offensive. Obviously, the gospel can be offensive to people at times, so
Fair
that's
distinction.
obvious. But nothing overtly where we're going above and beyond, right? And so, yeah, there are times where we have to say like, "Hey, we're not going to use this article because maybe it's a little too political." Frankly, it's not touching on gospel message. It's actually speaking a little bit too much from the right or the left, right? Or sometimes it's like that's not what Jesus said. Like so we're not gonna put this one in it, or we'll edit it and we'll make suggestions. So we do that as well. Mostly with parish magazines, especially ones who are concerned about evangelization, we don't run into that problem all that often. Now, you talked about trash, and stylistic trash is also something that we're not snobs, right? We do have a style guide. And so actually as an editor from time to time, personally I've worked in multiple phases of our business. You do have to kind of weigh and balance, okay, is this something is this more than just my personal opinion that I don't like it, right? You have to kind of see is this stylistically objectively bad? Is somebody going to be able to understand it, or if not? And so in those cases, we kind of make our suggestions. If it's like we need to have this better written, we'll make our suggestions on how to write it to make it more understandable. And usually the parish accepts that. I haven't had an instance where they're like, no, because usually it's like Susie was just trying to put something together, and then they're like, oh, does this? And then they look at us and you're like, "You're the professionals, make it sound better." And so we try to make it sound better
I
for them.
love that. Well, and I could see too, for the parish trying to even just a different avenue for youth ministers. You think about all the school journalism clubs and things like that. There's
Yeah.
avenues for you to plug kids into the process
Yeah.
of evangelization using their natural gifts, talents, interests, and to incorporate that. And Granny Smith is gonna love it when
Yeah.
her granddaughter is publishing this article in the parish newsletter or the parish magazine. These are great ways to aid evangelization, and I
Mm.
just see that you open up so many avenues like that. I'm wondering, what's the biggest mistake that you see parishes make when they're doing their first launch or getting this off the ground?
Maybe just focusing on the minutia, right?
Mm,
And I think there's sometimes where if we get so hung up on every little thing to make it perfect, and it's like this is going to go out month after month after month, and it's not to say that we accept mistakes. We don't want any grammatic. We want to be taken seriously, when it comes to this. But just like the article that's slaved over for hours and hours on end to the point where it brings anxiety. I think is sometimes for a parish they just get a little too much in their head. And it's good to take it seriously. Please take it seriously. But just know that we don't want this to be kind of like a you really got to stress. This is not this isn't like the new evangelization is not something that is oh gosh, it's not gonna fail because you missed the wrong phrase, and I think that idea behind those type of things. But on the other side, parish often sometimes a parish can not understand deadlines, right? So and this depends on, people that you work with. And so we do like to have people stick to deadlines because that affects when the magazine hits mailboxes. And so our process is a specific process that really focuses on making sure that all of the steps of making a well done magazine are done well, but that takes time. And so that sometimes you might be writing about Easter during Lent, right? Like that is a real reality because, it takes a
thinking
little bit.
ahead, yeah.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of, yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get the magazine printed and then mailed and then all these different things. So the two things I'd say is too much stress over it and then the other one is making sure that we hit our deadlines. Similar to how Kathleen, who runs the bulletin wants you to hit her deadline.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. Well, one last question from me, and I just to share, I mean, the moment or a story, a phone call that you received, that just reminds you why this work matters, something that keeps you really like your heart invested in the mission here.
Yeah, no, that's a good one because as a we talked about at the top of the show at the beginning, it was just a little bit more about I was doing in the trenches one-on-one evangelization with or one on 20 or one-on-one, just depending on how you work with students, but that's a very satisfying form of evangelization because you can see the results right in front of you. You can walk with a person day after day and see the light go on. There's also a lot more frustrations too, but with discipline and all that stuff within the classroom. But so my a lot of my work, helping parishes get to this point of launching a magazine is a lot of behind the computer, and so you can kind of not see that from time to time the joys, the successes. But every once in a while, parishes will share their success stories. And I think of, one in Arizona where they were talking about how they had been tracking their growth each time that somebody came into the church. They said, "Okay, well, how did you hear about us?" And they had been sending out the magazine. And they said at one point it was like 5 or 6 families a month were coming in. And that's over a shorter period of time. And Arizona is obviously a very large and growing area, right? So the demographics were there, but our magazines were helping bring in those families just because they saw the magazine and they thought the parish cared about them. I think whenever you communicate with somebody, the easiest way to not to get mad at somebody and to have arguments. I'm thinking about my relationship with my wife. Like the easiest way for me to accuse her in my mind of all the things that are going on is I just don't want to talk about her because I don't want to hear what she has to say because that will probably debunk what's going on in my head of what the actual what's going on. And the same thing goes with a parish in their community. Is somebody can really make a lot of excuses to stay away from the church because they don't believe that the parish cares about them. And it might be true, but like it's just one of those things where whenever they started to receive it in the mailbox, and I think of another one. A priest just told us this the other day, and I was having some doubts, not doubts, but just like, this is a drudgery of work day after day after day. And then the president of the company shared it with us, and he said, "Yeah, we had somebody reach out to us, a priest share out to us, and he didn't, break the seal of confession or anything like that. But he said he's had 3 or 4 people, and they just launched their magazine. 3 or 4 people come back to the sacrament of confession because the magazine hit their mailboxes. That was, and it's like." 3 or 4 people come back to confession, just because, I'm doing spreadsheets or making calls or whatever the case may be. It's like, okay, that's a great deal. Even though I'm not sitting in front of, students and like having like their eyes light up with some words that I said, which was probably egotistical to begin with. But regardless, yeah. So it's just those cool stories that you hear from parishes that's like, yeah, people are coming back and being engaged in this wave of new evangelization that we're just riding. We as we all know since COVID something has turned. Everybody knows what the baptism numbers that are skyrocketing now. It's because we went so low that it can only go up, but things are changing, things are twisting, and we're just kind of another tool that somebody can use within the evangelization sphere to help them bring more people back to the love of Jesus Christ, because that's what it's all about. I mean, that really is what it's all about.
Absolutely. Well, and something you said in there is that people would come in and they'd say, "I saw the magazine and I felt like the parish thought about me. They knew about me and they thought about me." And in my mind, hospitality is such a big buzzword in the church.
Yeah.
And so we have these hospitality ministries, which are just door greeters. But real hospitality says, "I thought about you before you even showed up." Right? That's like a real depth of hospitality. That's
Mhm,
Abraham waiting
mhm,
at the front of the tent in the heat of the
mhm,
day, waiting for someone
mhm,
to arrive. Right?
mhm.
That's hospitality. And what this beautifully designed magazine does is it says something that most bulletins don't, right? Most poorly designed, just not pleasant to read bulletins. It's just a list of dates and facts and numbers and stuff. What this magazine says is we really did think about you. And we care about you enough to like extend ourselves outward to you. And if the parish doesn't have the expertise to put out a professionally crafted bulletin, there's an apostolate that does that. Amen.
Amen, amen. And in addition to what you just said, it shows life, right? You mean like how many people said like, "Oh yeah, I go to Saint John the Baptist or whatever. They have their own magazine." You're like, they can do that? That's the place that things are going on. I know if I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, that parish has a magazine? Wow, that's something that really shows life in vitality." Because you have to be able to fill the magazine with something, right? Bulletin, you can put anything in it. But magazine, you have to have beauty. And so it's just one of those things where, yeah, we life and gift and people want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of something that's alive. They want to be a part of something that cares about them, which is the new evangelization in a nutshell, is just showing care, and sharing with them the life that we have.
Well, Isaac, this has been a great conversation. You mentioned that if somebody's interested, really the next step is talking with you or Shannon. So where can parish leaders go to learn more or start that conversation with you and your team?
Yeah, you can go to our website, like I said, decidedexcellence.com/parish, and there will be a little form you can fill out, and that'll put you in contact with myself, and then I will get it to Shannon because she's really the nice person you want to talk to. And then, yeah, or you can email me directly, isummers@decidedexcellence.com. We have a social media, we have pages. That's nice. They tell you where to get to us too. Those are all decidedexcellence.com or decided excellence on your Facebook, Instagram, all those different things. So we don't do X, the everything app. Sorry.
That's just fine. All right. Well, Isaac, thank you for being on the episode. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, John. I love what you're doing. and I can't wait to listen to more.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, before we wrap, what Isaac is offering is a real tool for real parishes. And so I really appreciate you being on here. Think about the design, the printing, the mailing, like that's all handled out for you. Like the content partnerships are there. The model really works. Like they've got the proof of that. But if you're a parish and you're kind of like feeling a little stuck, like we don't know how to launch into that, that's really what Catholic Ministry Professionals is here for, right? If you're having trouble aligning your team around decisions like this, I'd love to come in and have a conversation with your parish so you can get yourselves to a point where people like Isaac can come in and they can just help you like take the gospel and run with it. And so if you're thinking we need this, but you're not sure where your team is, you can also head to catholicministryprofessionals.com and start a conversation. We'll help you figure out what needs to be in place to be able to leverage forward into this next chapter in your journey. This apostolate, like Decided Excellence, it's a great tool for you. And we really want to help our parishes get to the point where they can partner with excellent apostolates like this. So thank you for listening to the Catholic Ministry Professionals podcast. Please take a moment, subscribe, leave us a review. And with that, we'll see you in the vineyard.